were interrupted.
Of course, I will always remind you that it is part of the
break away from regular programming now as we cross over to the nation's capital to bring you the live coverage of the minister's briefing on the current power crisis and tariff hike as instructed by the president.
To ensure that Nigerians get this information that they require. After all, the government is here in trust on behalf of Nigerians. And in doing that, we always say that trust in public communication must be upheld. So it is the desire of this administration, it is the desire of this ministry to ensure that, as been directed by Mr. President, always ensure that information flowing from government to Nigerians is always made available to them honestly, freely, and without any form of embellishment. Now, like I said earlier, we are returning trust to public communication. And what does that mean? Whatever we say here are things that we can fact-check, things that we can verify, so that at the end of the day, mutual trust that should exist between Nigerians and the leadership at all levels will be maintained. Today, we are having the Honorable Minister of Power, Mr. Agila, here to talk to us about the impact and to explain to us what has happened in the last couple of days, especially in the electricity or energy subsector. Nigerians have had the equivalent of hearing from the National Electricity Regulatory Agency that indeed there is a particular section of consumers of Nigerian power that their tariffs have gone up marginally or significantly. Now, this is just about 15% of those who are actually directly consuming this power. So, what are those? Who are those people? What are those things that have actually been charged? Where is this tariff going to affect the most? Who are the people who are going to pay? Who are those that are immune from it, if any? You will hear all that from the Honorable Minister of Power. But what I will tell you is that please let us have an open mind to hear from the Honorable Minister himself. What is it that he has to say about this? If there are clarifications, of course, he has come with the Executive Vice Chairman, like I said earlier, of the Nigerian Electricity Regulation Commission to answer some technical questions if there are. We will make this interaction, this meeting as interactive as possible, because Nigerians need to know about what is happening there and why it is happening and to what extent it is happening will affect their lives. We hear all that there are. If there are clarifications, I'm sure that the Honorable Minister of Power and members of the delegation will answer those effectively. Suffice to know that it's our duty to inform Nigerians and bring this to their information. Nigerians need to know at all times what the government is doing, and it's because of that that this ministerial briefing was instituted in the first place. So without wasting much time, I would want to invite the Honorable Minister of Power to give us a presentation, after which there will be an opportunity by members of Nigerian media to ask questions on behalf of Nigerians and seek clarifications where necessary so that Nigerians will be better informed. Once again, I will come back to you later during the question and answer session, but for now, let me invite my colleague, the Honorable Minister of Power, to give his address. Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My colleague and big brother, the Honorable Minister of Information, the Special Advisor to Mr. President on Information and Strategy, the Chairman, Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, ably represented at this event by the Commissioner and Executive Vice Chairman, Dr. Muslim Husseini. All senior officials of various federal ministries present here, CEOs and the senior officials of government agencies and parastatals present, distinguished invited guests, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen, I say good afternoon to you all. Let me also join the Honourable Minister of Information to appreciate the gentlemen of the media for the consistent support they have extended to this government in airing the activities of government and supporting all the laudable activities of this administration to give to the people the quality lives that they deserve, and the gradual delivery of all the electoral promises of our principal, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, under his renewed hope agenda. We thank you so much for the support, and we hope that we'll sustain this cordial relationship till the end of this administration. The event of this afternoon is quite important to us all, given the importance of power to our daily lives and the centrality of the power sector to achieving sustainable economic growth and industrial development. The power sector is quite unique compared to all the other sectors because everybody is affected by electricity. Every household, every business, every institution, be it health or educational institutions, and every industry is affected. And I've said it in the past that one of the major contributors to consistent depreciation in value of our currency has been our heavy dependence on imports, which is why this administration has taken it as one of its cardinal activity to achieve import substitution and export promotion. And when you talk about import substitution and export promotion, local production comes into play. There's no way you talk about local production without the energy. So energy is important and central to the activities of government. This is going to be an interactive session, but before then, we'll take just 15 to 20 minutes to provide an overview of the power sector and the activities of our ministry and our agencies to ensure that we transform the sector to the standard that we all aim for. I will provide that overview. There are some technical details of the recent increase in tariff for a portion of the consumers, which is just 15%, branded as Band A customers. I have my colleague here, Dr. Muslim Hussein, that will provide some insight into the technical details, and will now take questions and answers. Firstly, let me appeal to the general public and electricity consumers, including you and I, to display some level of understanding with whatever policy or whatever pronouncement that this administration comes up with, and let us maintain the trust and confidence that we have reposed in this government. This government was voted in democratically based on the trust and confidence of the electorate. The can-do spirit that you observed in Mr. President is still there. He has done it elsewhere before now, in Lagos State, and we hope and we believe that he's going to replicate the same at the federal level together with his hard-working team. Power is critical to optimal performance of other sectors. There's no sector that can perform optimally without stability in the power sector. And Mr. President has resolved to use the power sector to drive the delivery of his laudable objectives of sustainable economic growth and industrial development under the renewed hope agenda. We are all aware of the current actions that citizens are passing through based on some tough decisions, but necessary decisions that government has taken in the recent past about removal of fuel subsidy, about harmonization of the dual exchange rates. We know that this has led to a lot of things. The inflation rate is there, the devaluation of the naira is there, and the increase in prices of goods and services. These are enough actions that government is not ready to aggravate at any rate. We are all aware of this. So government will not deliberately come up with a policy to worsen an already bad situation that we are struggling to come out of, which I believe they are necessary pains if you are targeting some gains in this sector. And Mr. President is also committed to transforming the power sector. For the first time in the history of the sector, we have been bold enough and we have been committed enough to address the fundamental issues that have been the bane of the power sector in this country. We all believe that when a system or a structure is passing through repair, is passing through transformation, is passing through revamping, it does not necessarily mean a complete disappearance of the existing pain. In fact, in some cases, it might mean aggravation of the pain in the short time for us to achieve a permanent gain. My favorite example has always been road construction. We're all aware of the hardship people passed through when they were renovating the terminal bridge. A particular lane was closed and everybody was passing just a single lane. It was a lot of traffic and inconvenience. But today, that they have finished the renovation, everybody passes through the bridge without any issue. Another example was the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which was a notorious road before now. For 12 to 15 years, when this road was passing through renovation and reconstruction, there was serious pains. Pains that were even greater than what we used to experience. There were gridlocks. People spent a whole day, people spent nights on these roads. And I personally witnessed a wedding ceremony that took place on that particular road because of gridlock. But today, on completion of that road, there is no single traffic gridlock and everybody passes it smoothly. So I want to plead for understanding, I want to plead for patience, and I want to plead for your trust and confidence that you should exercise some patience with government, that we are addressing the root cause of the problem in the power sector. Past administration may not have been bold enough to address this issue. But because we are sincere with our resolve to transform this sector, to be comparable to what we witnessed in other countries in the West and the Far East, we must pass through some necessary and unavoidable pains. At the Power Ministry, our core mandate, to remind you again, is to expedite national development through formulation of policies and establishment of systems, structures, and institutions that will guarantee the long-term sustainability of the power sector, to be able to provide functional, reliable, affordable, and cost-effective electricity to households, to businesses, to institutions, and to industries. So we have the policy formulators as the ministry. We also have the regulators that ensure that the operators comply with the policy formulated. That is the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, the NEC. Then we have the operators at the third level. The operators are the players, both public and private sector players, across the three segments of the power sector value chain. We have the generating companies. In fact, let me start out by saying that we have the gas producing companies that supply gas to the power generating companies. Then we have the transmission company, which is the long-distance transportation of power. Then we have the distribution companies that drop power into our households, businesses, and industries. These are the layers in the power sector. So there are a few things that are necessary that we must achieve. Number one is achieving an operational sustainability of the operators on cost recovery. Anybody that goes into any business, the first intention is to recover costs, then if possible, make some profits. The moment you cannot cover your costs, the sustainability of such business is doubtful. It will be run aground. But this cost recovery can either be through commercial pricing or the subsidized pricing. Commercial pricing is when the entire cost of producing power is transferred 100% plus the profits to the consumers of power. Subsidized pricing regime is when the consumers are not allowed to pay the full cost of production plus markup, and government has pledged to pay a portion of this on their behalf. That is the regime that we have in Nigeria. We are in a subsidy pricing regime, whereby government provides a large portion of the cost of producing, of transmitting, and of redistributing power. And I must tell you that as of today, before the introduction of the tariff increase, government is subsidizing nothing less than 67% of the cost of producing, transmitting, and distributing electricity in Nigeria. At the current exchange rates, this is going to translate into 2.9 trillion naira for 2024. This is more than 10% of the national budget. Power sector is just a single sector out of so many sectors that government has to attend to. We have the works, we have housing, we have education, we have health, we have defense, and so on and so forth, that are all competing for this meager revenue from the government. So it will be very, very insensitive on our part to force or compel governments to continue to subsidize at that rate of almost 3 trillion for the power sector alone. We just have to be realistic and considerate. We also must ensure that the regulators are independent and there is consequence management for non-compliance by the operators in terms of punishment meted out to a non-compliant power sector player, be it a distribution company, the transmission company, or any of the generating companies. Then the last one that we must achieve at the ministry is consumer protection and value for money. Whatever consumer pays for, there must be commensurate value for it. Complaints of customers must be promptly attended to by the power sector operators. Then, from the policy formulation perspective, the recent increase in tariff for only band A customer, which is just 15% of electricity consumers in Nigeria, as our the latest statistics is a little about 12 million customers in the sector, and this will only affect about 1.5 million customers. The remaining 10.5 million customers will continue to enjoy government subsidy at about almost 70%. And the reason why we did this will be explained in a short while. This tariff review is in conformity with our policy trust of maintaining a subsidized pricing regime in the short run or in the short time, with a transition plan to achieving a full cost reflective tariff for the sector over, say, a period of 3 years. I've mentioned this in a couple of my media briefings, that it is because of government sensitivity to the suffering, to the pains of our people, that will not make us to migrate fully into a cost reflective tariff, or in another language, to remove subsidy 100% in the power sector like it was done in the oil and gas sector. Government is so sensitive to the pains of the people, to the sufferings of the people, and we are not ready to aggravate these sufferings any longer, which is why we said it must be a journey rather than a destination. And the journey starts from now, that we should do a gradual migration from the subsidy regime to a full cost reflective regime. And we must start with some customers. This is not like a pilot for us at the Ministry of Power and our agencies. It's like a proof of concept. It's a POC that those that will have the infrastructure sufficient enough, adequate enough, and qualitative enough to deliver stable power that will enjoy between 20 and 24 hours of light to be the ones that we should target. And this set of customers, we have established the capacity and the willingness to pay for this. And it only affects 15% of customers with established capacity and willingness to pay at a service level agreement. The service level agreement is 20 hours at the minimum. And on the overall, I believe realistically that if we're able to comply with this service level agreement of 20 hours minimum, it is still far cheaper than the alternative source of diesel and petrol generators. I believe you will agree with me that the average cost of generating a kilowatt hour of power today using diesel and petrol generator is not less than 450 naira to 500 naira, because of the capital investment of purchasing the generator, because of the daily operational funding of the fueling of the generator, and because of the regular intermittent servicing of these generators. The cost is not less than 500 naira. So if we are putting the tariff at 225 naira thereabouts, I believe it is more than 50% cheaper than running alternative power. And like I mentioned earlier, that for the first time in many years, government is taking a bold step to address the fundamental issues confronting the power sector. Number one issue, which I believe this step that we have taken is going to address, is the liquidity and pricing issues. This sector has been deprived of the required liquidity to keep it running on a sustainable level, to keep it to continuously being in business, because it is no longer attractive to investors. Even the operators don't have enough liquidity to invest in enhancement of their infrastructures. The generating companies could not pay the gas companies, which is the raw material, which is the feedstock that they use to generate power. The generating companies cannot service their equipment. It's getting to a level that they cannot even pay their salary, the salaries of their workers, because of the accumulated debt in the sector due to lack of liquidity and commercial pricing. And I believe that previous administrations have shied away from addressing this. It's a tough conversation, but we must have it at a point if we are serious about stable power sector in this country. And this government is committed to doing it. Might be painful in the short term, but the gains will come very soon, and the gains shall become permanent. Number two is the infrastructure deficit in the sector. We keep saying it's a three-segment sector: generation, transmission, and distribution. For me, to be more comprehensive, it's a five-segment sector. We have the gas sector with gas production and transportation infrastructure. We have the generating companies, which is the thermal plants, that's the gas-fired power plants, and the hydroelectric power plants. Those are the generators. Then we have the transmission company, which is the transmission segment that has to do with long-distance transportation of power from the point or location of generation to the point of distribution. Those are the high-voltage power lines and towers that we see all over, that people even vandalize. That's number three. Then we have the distribution sector, which are the last mile segments. They are the ones that people see. They are the ones that take power to our houses, to our businesses, and to our industries. That's the fourth segment. Then the fifth segment, which most people try to overlook, is the consumer segment itself. Because the consumer segment plays a major role in this sector too, and it must be well focused and dealt with. And all these segments need to enhance infrastructure. All our power generating, all our gas pipelines are bad. There have been vandalization of the gas pipelines. There have been lack of adequate pressure in the gas pipes, where we need compressors, where we need boosters. The generating companies, their plants are also deteriorating. They are obsolete. The transmission company, the lines have been installed over 50 years. The cables are weak, the towers are falling, people are vandalizing it. The transformers are also weak. I've seen a transformer that was labeled ECN, Electricity Company of Nigeria, which means that it was installed in the 60s. That has not been replaced. The same thing with distribution segments, infrastructures. Transformers are weak. Injection substations are not working, the power lines are deteriorating, the electric poles are falling. And on the consumer segment, we have over 55% meter gap, about 60% meter gap. Out of our 12 million customers that we have, only a little over 5 million are metered. So people are paying on expected billing. You can see the huge infrastructure deficits across these five segments. It requires money for us to enhance these segments. It requires money to replace deteriorating equipment and gadgets, to reconduct, to erect new towers, and to even establish new plants, to repair the pipelines, to install boosters and compressors for adequate pressure. The monies are not coming because of lack of liquidity. Investors are not coming because they could not see a line of sight of recovery of their investments, not to talk of making profits. The bankers are not lending because it is not attractive to lenders. It is not bankable. Bankers cannot see a line of sight on how the money they lend to us will be repaid. So you see that this structural deficit can only be fixed if we improve liquidity in the sector. Then the issue of structural issues in the industry. This sector used to be on the exclusive legislative list of the National Assembly, whereby it was only the federal government that could invest and play in the power sector, whether it's generation, whether it's transmission or distribution. It was only one NEPA that we had. It was only one ECN, one NEPA, one PHCN. Those are structural issues that we believe that it must be a decentralized sector. And Mr. President has made our job so easy by signing into law the Electricity Act of 2023 that has unbundled all the segments in the sector and that has allowed the subnational government, both the state and local government, to play in the sector. That's also allowing the private sector to come in and play in the sector. Those are the issues that we are addressing that have not been addressed in the past. So, decentralization is a major issue and we are achieving it. The consumer protection issue, we have said it that service level agreement is a covenant. If we say we are giving you 20 hours for paying 225 naira per kilowatt hour, that 20 hours must not be less than 20 hours. If it is less than 20 hours, there must be sanctions. There must be consequence management. You can clap if you want to clap. I can see that you wanted to clap. Don't let us shy away from our responsibilities. Please. So we thank Mr. President for doing that. And the consumer protection, I've told you, there will be sanctions, there will be consequences on the part of the distribution companies that are not compliant, on the part of NEC if they are not tracking it appropriately. So the first phase that we are going through is a pilot phase and is a proof of concept to drive the DISCO's investment in infrastructure. Once they know they are making money from this band A tariff increase, they will be fast to improve infrastructure in other bands and migrate them to band A, and they will make more money and the industry will be sustained. It's also to drive or accelerate migration of customers to premium bands within a very short period. It's an incentive for them to migrate band B, band C to band A. I listened to NAC yesterday. The band A figures that we have is over 1,000. Then we looked at them, we examined them. Which among these can provide 20 hours of light? And we downgraded over 500. It's only 481 feeders that are currently classified as band A. These are the feeders that are good enough, in very good condition to provide stable, uninterrupted power to the consumers. So, we are not sleeping. We are living up to our responsibilities too. But the problem with power is, the moment the consumer cannot stand up, switch on the light, and the light shows up, we are not doing anything. So all efforts in generation, in transmission, can only be seen if it is translated to distribution to customers. This will also enable the DISCOs to charge appropriate pricing with value to customers. We don't just want to increase the tariff, we want the consumers to have value for their money. That is the essence of this. And it is better that we start this journey now, so that we can conclude it on time, because the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step in the right direction. This one is in the right direction, and we want to display the understanding that we deserve. And lastly is to encourage energy consumption management by consumers. One bitter truth that we also need to tell ourselves as Nigerians. We are all Nigerians. A few people are only privileged to sit on the high table here. We are on the same level. We must be able to talk the truth to ourselves. We don't have the culture of consumption management in this country in terms of power, just because of the cheapness of the tariff we pay in power. A lot of people come back from work, they want to have dinner, or they want to play with their colleagues down the road. They switch on the AC for the room to be cooling before they come back. Yes, some people will be going to work in the morning. A freezer has been left on for days. They will still leave it on when all the items in the freezer are already frozen. And 5, 6, 8 hours of their absence will not be able to defreeze. They will still leave it. It will consume power. Just because we are not paying enough. We've all been overseas before. We know how conscious the power consumers are to consumption of electricity. Thank you very much. I will round up soon. So this will also enable us, thank you very much. This will also enable us to manage our consumption. Hello? Ladies and gentlemen, let me round up this. I want to say this before I round up, that there is also service tracking and consequence management and penalties on consumption. We are carrying out a number of initiatives to ensure that we improve activities and performance of the sector. We have the presidential power initiatives, which we are actually carrying out to ensure that infrastructure are enhanced and improved across the sector, both transmission and the distribution sector. There's also the PMI, the presidential monitoring initiatives, to which we are going to discuss elaborately, maybe in another forum, to ensure that we close the huge meter gap that we have in the industry. And we also have a lot of development banks that are working with us with projects in transmission and distribution to ensure that we enhance the activities there. So as a ministry, we are committed to make an impact during this administration. We are ramping up generation by opening up more generation points. An example is the Zogeru that's about to start operation, and we also have our projects in renewable energy across the country. We are also enhancing transmission. We are strengthening the capacity and of the national grid by establishing more substations. We are installing more lines. We are introducing SCADA, that's the security control and data control, which is the automated control of frequency of the national grid that will prevent frequent grid collapse. Then we are trying to look for creative ways to curb vandalization in addition to the efforts of the National Security Advisor. Then we are talking about providing the super grid, which is the backup or failover grid. For distribution infrastructure deficiencies, we are installing new lines, we are reconducting the old lines, we are also introducing new injection substations and revamping the existing ones, while we are looking at existing weak distribution transformer. I've mentioned the issue of a reduction of meter gap and investment in communication and advocacy to reorientate and educate our people of the need to cooperate with the operators in the power sector in terms of protecting our national assets, in terms of avoiding power theft, bypassing of meters and all that. So all these are what we are doing, and we believe that very soon you start seeing the positive results of activities in the power sectors, from policy formulation and execution to control and to operation of the power sector. I would like to stop here and allow the Executive Vice Chairman to talk briefly about the modalities around the recent increase in the tariff of Band A customers, which is just 50% of the total customers. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Honorable Ministers. Please permit me to stand with the protocol. The Honorable Minister of Power has covered a lot of ground, and just want me and play a supporting role, because since the order was released, we've addressed you, we've gone to different places to talk about the technicality behind it. So I will first and foremost support the policy direction that the Honorable Minister, who has the oversight over the power sector generally, has talked about. But I would like to just highlight a few things. First, 85% of electricity consumers are not affected by the rate review. That's one. Secondly, the rate review that has taken place is pro-quo rate review. I can provide further information on that. But before I do that, the Honorable Minister mentioned one figure, which is correct. They are trying to review 67% of the cost of generation, transmission, and distribution being subsidized by the government. And I want you to take the word generation, transmission, and distribution. Because I will now provide another perspective. So I quoted the Honorable Minister also that you don't report any contradiction. I want to provide another perspective to it. In January, the generation invoice was 240 billion to the DISCO. DISCOs were only mandated to pay 24 billion.
Yes.
That is 10%.
10%.
So that tells you that 90% of the generation cost, in this case, you know, I didn't mention transmission and distribution, so that I don't think that the figures are different. 90% of the generation cost was being borne by the government. Okay. And I think a lot has gone into discussion around how much it amounts to over a year. The Honorable Minister has also spoken to that. So with this and out of that, now with the review, that means that about 50% of the generation cost will now still be subsidized by the government. Okay. So what that tells you, 90 minus 50 tells you that there is a reduction of about 40% by reducing the rates to the elites practically. That means that 15% of Nigerian customers account for 40% subsidy on the generation cost. Now the government has said that okay, this elite, because it's clear the type of infrastructure, the sophistication of the infrastructure in Maitama is different from the sophistication of infrastructure in Yanyam. And the people living in areas like Maitama, Sokoro, and so on, in Kogi of this world, they are rich than other people, and they have heavy energy consuming appliances. So that if you as a person or other Nigerian consume 1 kilowatt-hour, let's say per day, or about 1 hour, these people will consume multiple of that. That means that they benefit more from the subsidy. Yes. So now what we have done is to now say, okay, let the people that need this subsidy actually be the one to benefit. And the Honorable Minister has talked about some of the gains that will come if the government is relieved of this fiscal burden of about 1.4 trillion naira reduction. We have health, we have education, and we have other, then we have investment needs in the sector. And he has also talked about many technical things which we talked about previously, that we need to incentivize investment. If there is no path to recovery, nobody will come and invest. The pricing is essential. It may be painful at the beginning, but it will definitely be beneficial. So this subsidy that we've introduced, this subsidy reduction and the rate review we have introduced is proper. I think that's important for me to point out. And the Honorable Minister has said something about compliance, because I know that's the question that has come up repeatedly. We are committed. NET was limited in terms of its ability to enforce compliance in the last Electric Power Sector Reform Act. The previous act was a reform act. It was good to midwife the reform processes. There are two, if you read the act very well, that particular act, there are two places where enforcement by the regulator was mentioned. Enforcement by the regulator was mentioned. One is enforcement related to terms and conditions of license of any licensee. That is, if you violate your terms and conditions of your license, the regulator can only sanction you by the way of 10,000 naira per day. If you violate the order or the regulation of the commission, the regulator can only fine you 10,000 naira. In 20 years, of course, we did some enforcement. Then 50,000 million naira fine to Ibadan Disco, 14 to I think the new discos and so on and so forth. But in 2018, we suspended the board of Ibadan Disco. Suspended. not south. They took us to court, and because then we didn't have power. But with the new Electricity Act, the power has been greatly improved. In January, we removed the board of Kaduna District. They couldn't go to court. Today, because yesterday, and I think most likely is the question that will come at this, because it's related to the issues that have been trending online. We've tried to address that, explain that, and so on and so forth. But let me quickly address it. Today, we issue an order to Abuja District to pay 200 million naira fine for violation of the order that we are discussing today. The fine, of course, when it is paid, is going to the Rural Electrification Fund in line with the provision of the Act. It doesn't belong to the Commission, and there is a wisdom in that, so that we don't turn ourselves to revenue generating just because we just want to improve our own personal liquidity. And what led to that, I will explain now. You are all aware, I think it's been reported in the media, that some customers have complained that they are not enjoying 20 hours of supply. And they've gone to vent, and they are charged the new rates. There are two scenarios. There is Abuja scenario, and there are other district scenarios, because we began, we found your feedback. We really appreciate you. We began the investigation immediately. Abuja scenario that led to this was an unpardonable excuse or error. What happened was, immediately the order was released, rationally they did something they needed to do. But what they now did was, they applied the rates to all the customers, regardless of their bands. So what now happened is, because rationally customers will go and spend to build the implementation of the rate, immediately they hear the news. Some customers were lucky. I've heard a news about the customer that was able to buy 7,000 units of energy, 10,000 kilowatt hour at the old rate, and is enjoying 20 hours of supply. But there are customers that are not supposed to be affected because they messed up the process. Those customers went and they were getting the new rate. So what the Commission has done is, first, they are saying it's error, it's error. The question is, if it was error, if it was an error, why didn't you make an error that we reduce the tariff for all the customers? It's an unpardonable error. So they've been fined 200 million naira first. The second action is that in the same order, we've asked them to refund all the customers that are affected. They will be sending the right token to the customer in addition to the token the customer already got. So the differential they will be sending to the customer. They've been given till next week because they are still currently working on cleaning up the mess. So I think I need to point out that. The second scenario, which has happened in some other districts, is this. Rationally, the Commission announced the review of tariff for 15% of customers. There are places that customers themselves, if they want to be truthful, they say that they are enjoying 20 hours. There are places that are not enjoying 20 hours and they are not affected by the rates. So for customers, we definitely rush rationally to go and spend and build the implementation just before this starts. So that happened. Some were lucky, some were not lucky in some other districts. So what happened in some other districts is that because the non-band A customers, they are not affected, not much problem in that case, unlike Abuja. Because what the discos do was immediately the announcement was also made, they have three options. And I believe if we are rational, we'll also reason with them. One of the options they have is, the regulator has announced the price review. I'm sure customers will want to rush and build the implementation. Let me protect my revenue, mitigate the revenue loss. Three options are open. Shut down the platform until you effect the rate change. That will cause a serious chaos. Second option to them is limit the amount of energy a customer can vent so that you mitigate the effect. That also has its own implication. The third one will be that only by A are affected, only by A customers are affected. Change and they had an existing Bank A customer, like the case of Abuja, or I can take the case of Ikeja. They have about 200 or they have about Bank A feeders in the original one. So what they will do is change the tariff for all the Bank A feeders first, and begin to clean up the feeder, reduce the feeders that NECA said, no, I only allow you 45 feeders. Now, take it out, take the other feeders out. So in the process of doing that, any customer that also goes to fence in that district, and the customers was classified as Bank A before, will definitely be cut off by the higher rate. So on that note, I think I'll try as much as possible to explain, but we have also issued directives to all the districts, publish the feeders affected, communicate with customers, and any customers that have been cut off by this wrong application of bill, you have to refund them. And now we like to appeal to Nigerians that have been affected. Please keep your facts. Keep your facts. If by chance any your disco does not refund you, please contact them. They have up until next week, Thursday, to refund the customers that have been wrongly billed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we publish the contact number. We have the call center. Then we have complaints@nec.gov.ng. Complaints@nec.gov.ng. Then we have a situation room. Our media people are here. They will definitely publish the contact phone numbers on our website, and we also advertise in the national dailies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mr. Abba. I want to really appreciate the Vice Chairman, Dr. Mushibu Hussein. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for being so explicit in your presentation. Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. What Alima said, when we all think alike, no one is thinking. I think that is the essence of the segment we are entertaining. That is the question and answer section. Because we believe the media is the mirror of the society. So communication is said to be effective when there is a sender and a receiver, and there was opportunity for feedback. At this point, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are moving to the question and answer segment. Please, like I said from the onset, when you are recognized to speak, tell us your name, the media organization you are representing. And please, let us restrict our questions and comments to the presentation of the special case, the Honorable Mr. Abba. Let us be listening in the use of language. With the permission of our Chief Moderator, because we just take the questions because of our time. At this point, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to declare the floor open for your questions, please. Thank you. 1, 2. We will pause the first 3 questions. If time permits, we will take 1 or 2 more. But let's take the first 3. Honorable Minister, thank you very much for this timely briefing, because the Nigerians are really worried about the power situation. But I'm sure some of the issues that I want to address now are issues that you inherited and may not have people with. Number one, apart from the recent.
Nigerians would want to know from you, what is the status of the MOU that Nigeria signed with Germany to improve power supply in Nigeria, because there was so much hope when that agreement was signed. And your predecessor briefed us here last year and told us a lot about the value. The other issue that continues to bedevil the electricity system, you know that Zunguru, that was commissioned a few weeks ago, is not connected to the national grid. There is no connection to the national grid. How would the government spend such amount of money to establish that plant, but there was no provision to connect it to the national grid as at today? Was it an omission or an oversight? Some of the power plants continue to collect money from the federal government, but not a single kilowatt of power is taken by Nigerians under what you call take it or leave it. It is provided for as a clause in the power sales agreement. Why should we allow that? That an electricity generating company earns money only by the fact that it owns a power plant. Whether Nigeria uses or does not use energy from that plant, the federal government is mandated to pay. Why should we allow that? Let me leave that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The second question, please.
Honorable Minister, sir. My name is Yekin Akinwale. I work with the cable online newspaper. Having listened to the presentation carefully, I was hoping you were also going to mention as part of the root causes the privatization of the power sector. And I'm wondering, why is it difficult for the government to be in charge of the generation, distribution, and transmission of energy for the purpose of protecting the masses? It's obvious that the privatization has failed or is not working. So, if we keep leaving this in the hands of the investors, the masses are the receiving ends. Don't you think the government should, at this point in time, take charge of generation, distribution, and transmission? Thank you.
The third one, please.
Yes. Good evening, Honorable Minister and all the guests here. My name is Hamza Idris. I'm the editor of Daily Trust newspaper. Mine is, I don't know whether it is fair on your side, government in general, to say that this increment affects only 15% of Nigerians, and on our side, journalists to report to Nigerians that indeed it only affects 15% of Nigerians. And there is a reason. Ahead of the removal of fuel subsidy, the song was the same, that subsidy only benefits a fraction of Nigerians. And here we are today. The downtrodden are the ones really, really suffering. That is my question. Is it fair on your side? Is it fair on our side to report it? Thank you.
Okay, let's take. No? Good.
The Honorable Minister, sir. Abdurrahman Abdurraf is my name, Blueprint Newspapers. When the Honorable Minister of Power was, making his presentation, he spoke about capacity and stated that they've been able to establish the capacity of those in this 15% category. And I became shocked. Let me speak from a personal experience now. On my street in Kado Estate, majority of those people who live there are retirees. And this estate happens to fall under this category, Band A. Now the question is it very rational to fix Kado Estate and in the same cadre with the people in Asokoro, Maitama? Let's look at it. I mean, it's a very sensitive issue. We need to address this because Nigerians are listening and watching us. And we have to report it. Is it sensitive? Is it fair enough to put somebody who lives in Kado Estate and put him, we're not even talking those living in Brains and Amas. These are the big people. So, but seriously speaking, those in Asokoro, Maitama, I would have expected that the federal government was going to start there and say, okay, we are heaping the responsibilities or the gains which Nigerians will benefit from on these people, rather than spreading it across the lower cadres in that place. It's just a privilege to be in that place, not that there's any money there. That's a fact.
At this point, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like the Honorable Minister to please respond to all these questions, please. Honorable Minister, you have the floor, please.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the first set of questions that you have put across to us after the presentation. I think we have 6 questions in total, and I will not waste time in addressing each of these questions in turns. The first question was the question about the status of the Memorandum of Understanding signed with the German government on its G2G agreement on the presidential power initiatives that we all know as Siemens contract. Am I right? Yes. This agreement was signed in 2018. And due to one reason or the other, there was no major traction in executing these projects. It was an agreement with the German government to employ Siemens to support Nigeria in transforming its power transmission and distribution sector to the tune of a loan of $2.3 billion. But we know that immediately after this signing ceremony, there was COVID that prevented the desired traction of this agreement. And unfortunately, the main champion of the project, who happened to be the then Chief of Staff, late Abba Kyari, may his gentle soul rest in peace, of blessed memory, also passed on. Immediately after this, electoral campaign started and there was election. Then we had transition to a new government. So between 2018 and 2023, nothing serious actually happened on this agreement, on this MOU. They commenced the pilot phase because this project was supposed to be in 3 phases. The pilot phase, the phase 1, and the phase 2. But this pilot phase was not even gotten to any reasonable level until this new government came in. And you are all aware that the German Chancellor visited Nigeria sometime in November. And this was one of the issues discussed with Mr. President. And we got convinced that we needed to continue with this project. So there was an African Trade Summit, African Business Summit in Germany, which Mr. President attended. I accompanied him to the summit, and we had extensive conversations and discussions with the our German counterparts on this project. And we were both convinced that it would be in the mutual benefit of the 2 countries for us to proceed on this MOU. And we agreed that we were going to sign an acceleration agreement to kickstart this project all over again. And if you remember that in December at COP28 in Dubai, an acceleration agreement was signed between the Nigerian government and the German government, and between the Siemens Energy and FGN Power Company Limited. We all saw it on the news. After this, we have started the project in earnest. And I'm happy to inform this gathering this afternoon that we are almost concluding the pilot phase of this project. The pilot phase involved a turnkey offshore importation of 10 power transformers and 10 mobile substations for us to use as a POC for these projects. And I can tell you that all these items have arrived in the country. The 10 power transformers and the 10 power mobile stations. I can also confirm to you that out of the 10 transformers, we have installed and commissioned 5, which was also in the news. I personally commissioned this installation of these power transformers at various locations in the country. The mobile substations, we have installed about 3 out of 10 now, remaining 7. As soon as we finish installation, we are going to commission the mobile substations and energize it, and Nigerians will start seeing the impact of these projects. So we are fully convinced that with the success recorded at the pilot phase of this project, we are moving forward unperturbed on the remaining phases of this project. And the phases include transforming our transmission segment or network by expanding the capacity of transmission and strengthening the transmission to avoid the current fragility that leads to persistent grid collapse. This will involve upgrading of existing power transmission substations, about 14 of them. It's going to those are brownfield stations. It's going to involve establishment of new transmission substations, about 22 of them. It's going to involve installing new transmission power lines and reconductoring of some existing power lines, totaling almost 14,000 kilometers at the transmission segment. The same thing applies to the distribution segment, whereby there will be enhancement of our existing injection substations of the discos. There will be replacement and upgrading of existing 33 kV and 11 kV transformers, numbering about 6,000 transformers. We are also going to reconductor and install new lines, totaling almost 22,000 kilometers of lines. So I believe that once we are done with this first phase of the presidential power initiatives called Siemens Project, Nigerians will start seeing improvement in the strength, in the capacity of the national grid, and in the efficiency and effectiveness of the distribution companies. That is what I have to say about the Siemens projects. I can tell you we are on top of it. And Mr. President is exceptionally committed to seeing this project come to reality. Thank you. Number 2 is Zungeru. Let me correct this misinformation. Zungeru hydroelectric power plants is completed. The concessioning process is completed. The payment by the concessionaire has been made. The official handing over of these plants has been done to the concessionaire, which is Mainstream Energy, who are the current operators of Kanji and Jeba hydroelectric power plants. The stage we are now is the technical handover by the Chinese consultants that built Zungeru hydroelectric power plants to the concessionaire, because there is a 1-year defect liability period where these contractors need to be on site or the project site to ensure that whatever problem that occurs within the 1 year of handing over, they are able to fix it. So they are working seriously with the concessionaire and the Ministry of Power, together with the Bureau for Public Enterprise, BPE, to ensure that we conclude the technical handover of the plant. And I can tell you that testing started yesterday. That generation of power at the testing stage started yesterday at Zungeru. It will last about 1 or 2 weeks, after which full production will start. And I can tell you on good authority that Zungeru Hydroelectric Power Authority has capacity for evacuating power onto the national grid. It is complete misinformation for anybody to say that it is not connected to the national grid. No. There's no way we will invest such a humongous amount of money and infrastructures will not be put in place to evacuate the power generated onto the national grid. That is a waste and is not allowed. And I must let you know that the Chinese Exim Bank that funded or financed this project will not even allow that. So we have capacity. We can always improve the capacity because of his connection with Shiroro Hydroelectric Power Plants. So it's connected. Thank you for that. And the offtake agreements, which is generally called take or leave agreement, that the federal government signed with some power plants. And you mentioned that you have power plants who never generated 1 kilowatt hour of power and they are being paid for capacity. No way. It is not possible. And it can never be possible under this credible, transparent administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The celebrated case of take or leave capacity payment is Azura Power Plant, which we all know, that is in Iobo, in Benin. It is beside our NIPP power plant. I can tell you that is about one of the most productive, the most consistent, and the most supportive power plants. In fact, when the grid is down, we use that power plant for black starting. They have never gone out of production. I have personally visited this plant myself. I've inspected the facility, the infrastructures, the state-of-the-art modern production or generating plants. And they've been producing at maximum capacity. And that is what government pays. There is no other power plant that collects money from government without generating power. Nobody will allow that. Not the president, not the Minister of Finance, not the Minister of Power. I can tell you that. Be rest assured. Number 4 is the privatization of the power sector. You are asking, why did government reverse this process? That is your personal view. We all know the shortcomings of the privatization process. It is true that it has not achieved all its intended purpose. But I can tell you to a large extent that privatization is the way to go. How we carried it out or implemented it may be a problem. But it is not beyond revival. We can take steps to compel the private sector operators to performance. The kind of investment required in the power sector is humongous. It is huge. Government alone cannot provide the funds for investment in generation, in transmission, and in distribution, number 1. Number 2, government does not really have any business being in business. And facts, empirical facts have shown that in the past, privately run businesses, they do better, they perform better than government businesses. So it was not a wrong decision to privatize some section of our power sector value chain. But the efficiency and the effectiveness depend on the execution of this privatization, which is what this administration is working on. We have to correct all the deficiencies. Our power sector is so unique that every segment of the sector is unique. If you pick generation, is jointly owned. In fact, it's 3 types of ownership. There are some power plants that are 100% jointly owned. Geregu is there, Omotosho is there, the Omotosho and Geregu one. Azura is there. Sapele is there. Transcorp Power is there. There are some other sets that are owned by federal government but concessioned to a private operator. That is basically our hydropower plants. Jeba is there, Kanji is there, Shiroro is there, Kashibila is there, Gurara is there, Dadikowa is also there. Ownership, federal government, running is private sector on concession basis. Zungeru is also there, the new recent one. Then the third set are government-owned thermal gas-fired power plants, which are the ones built under the Nigerian Integrated Power Project, NIPP. They are all owned under the NDPH, which is the Niger Delta Power Holding Company. These are government businesses. But let me tell you, compare NDPHC plants today with any of the privately owned. They are better run. Yes, they are better run. So what we need to do is to look for a solution whereby it is in the hands of the private sector, but NAC as the regulator will ensure that they not only perform optimally, they also have the interest of the masses at heart. That's why government cannot fully liberalize the power sector today. If it's fully liberalized like the communication sector or the oil and gas sector, we will not be sitting down here discussing tariff, because the private sector will only give you prices that is good for their business. But we cannot leave it because of the centrality and criticality of the power sector to individual households, to businesses, to commercial institutions, and to industries. So we will make the best of the bad situation. That's what we are trying to do. I agree with you. Number 5 is 15% of the customers. You say, how did we establish the capacity and willingness to pay? When discussions get to this kind of level, we should all be open. Between you and me, 90% of the customers that fall under this band A, we know ourselves. Yes. If they take light, these people will not hesitate to put on their generators. Diesel generators, 500 kVA, 250, 200, 100, thousands of diesels, liters of diesels. Petrol generators. So they even pay for more expensive alternative. And what we are saying is, for those that in this 15%, we are not saying pay arbitrarily. There is a service covenant. We will give you 20 hours and you pay for it. And let me tell you, there's no perfect situation. We might say that all the customers, preponderance of them can afford to pay 90%. But there will still be one or two, just like you mentioned. You said one estate, I don't know, Kado estate, that they may not have the capacity. What I would advise is frugality, efficient consumption management. It is not about what you pay per kilowatt hour. It's about consumption. We have to be as efficient in managing our consumption too. And if 20 hours is not in that estate, report to NAC. They are ready to downgrade them. Am I right? Yes. They are ready to downgrade them. Let me tell you one thing before we round up, please. With conscious and efficient consumption management, sincerely, at the new rate, we may have households that will still pay about the same bill. Yes, it's possible. Based on consumption management. We may have. So I implore us to be very prudent in consuming electricity. It is no longer cheap for band A. But this policy is pro-poor, like the EVC put it. It is pro-poor. The high-end people, they are the ones that are enjoying this subsidy more than others. But they consume more. And the portion of what they enjoy is more than what the poor are enjoying. We are saying no. Let them pay the right price. And let the poor breathe too. Thank you. Lastly, Capacity to pay established, Kado Estate, I think I've mentioned that. I think that's the last one. Thank you very much for that. Yes.
Thank you very much. When the Honorable Minister of Power said we know ourselves, you know the eyes are the silent orators of the mind. Everybody started laughing because really we know ourselves. At this point, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank the gentlemen of the media. This is the much we can take for today. We want to thank you for your time. I want to thank the Honorable Minister, our Dr. Musiliu Oseni. I thank you for actually briefing us and giving us the kind of expectations that we need. Before we bring this series to a close, after the national anthem, the host minister, okay. Let me give this opportunity to the host minister to please give our closing remarks. Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, my colleagues, for staying so painstakingly to see to the end of this exercise. Like I said at the beginning, this is one of the platforms that the Ministry of Information and National Orientation has put together to ensure that all ministers and other very senior government functionaries have the opportunity to talk to Nigerians through you, members of the press, to answer questions about government policies and programs so that Nigerians will be better informed. Like the Honorable Minister has said, this only affects about 15% of the electricity consumers, and Nigeria can no longer afford to pay about 2.9 trillion naira annually to subsidize power. This, of course, will bring down the cost of subsidy to about 40%. I'm sure about 1.1 trillion or thereabout will be saved annually. This money will be put into other sectors of our economy. Our hospitals are there, the education sector is there, the schools are there, the roads are there to be fixed. So it is also a way of freeing these resources to put there so that Nigerians can better appreciate the value of democracy. Let me say, as a way of rounding up, that we will continue to do this, continue to provide this platform so that Nigerians will know honestly, truthfully what government is doing, and you have opportunity to ask questions where there are and seek for clarifications where necessary, so that you better appreciate what government policy is doing. And this is just one of those series. We've had, like I said, the Minister of Health was here, Minister of Agriculture was here, Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment was here. Now we have had Minister of Power. Next time, we will bring you another minister to come and answer questions to you, to tell you what he or she is doing in their relevant sector, so that Nigerians will have an opportunity to also contribute to the debate on national development. Thank you for this, and we urge you, members of the press, please report responsibly, as government is trying to put out information out for you honestly, timely, and responsibly. It is also important that you please report responsibly in the interest of our nation. Thank you very much for coming. Until we see you again next time.
After the national anthem, the host minister will now lead our guest minister to estate pleasantries with editors and bureau chiefs at the basement. At this point, I would like to request us to please rise as we take the national anthem, please. Thank you. God bless you.
We'll now continue with our regular programs. Stay tuned. Welcome back from the live telecast. We'll now continue with our regular programs. Stay tuned. Welcome back from the live telecast. We'll now continue with our regular programs. Stay